I'm gonna give you host access and then I'm gonna leave.
Okay, sounds good. Hi everyone, we're just gonna wait a little bit for everyone to start coming into the meeting. If you guys want, in the meantime, just start putting like where you're from in the chat. So just put where you're from and then also whether you're a sophomore or a junior. So we're just gonna wait a little bit more for people to start getting here. But once again, guys, just put like what state or also city that you're from, and then whether you're a sophomore or a junior. And then we'll just wait for a few more people to get here.
Does anyone have any questions on like Airtable access? I'm just because some people are, I think, needing a bit of help for Airtable for all the Zoom links. I'll type in the chat right now or let me know. Nope. Okay, no problem. It should be pretty self-explanatory. Did everyone receive the email about the challenges? Give me a thumbs. Give me a thumbs up in the Zoom if you received the email. Okay, we have like 3 people, 4 people, 5 people.
Oh, and yeah, if you're a senior, you can also join. I've been getting a lot of like messages about that. You can also join for sure.
Okay, we have 44 attendees. Okay, I'm gonna go, Paula. Bye. Have fun.
Okay, so I think we should start already. So if everyone can turn on their cameras just like for a little bit, I want to take a screenshot of everyone. Let me see. Okay, let's see. So I'll wait for a few of you guys more to turn on your cameras. And then we'll take a picture. Okay, so I'm gonna give it like a few minutes. If you don't feel comfortable, that's also okay. Like, I just wanna get a picture of everyone. Okay. So if you're just coming in, we're putting in the chat where we're from and then what grade you're in. And then we're turning on our cameras to take a picture. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and take it. So everyone smile. Ready? Okay, cool. Okay, let me go ahead and save that. Okay. So, by the way, guys, when you exit any of the Zoom meetings, there's gonna be a feedback form that you guys can fill out to enter another like ticket into the raffle prizes that we're doing. So just make sure that you guys do that after the events. And we're just gonna start like talking about like the whole extracurricular activities and stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so that we can introduce ourselves. Today, you guys are gonna be hearing from me, Sabeen, and from Young. So let me go ahead and share the presentation. Can everyone see it? Okay. So today's presentation is going to be focused on extracurriculars, since that's a really important part about the college application process and just about your high school experience. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Sabine introduce herself first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sabeen Safi, and I'm an incoming freshman at Muhlenberg College. I'm a pre-dental student. So some things I'm involved in is I'm an avid volunteer, and I was in a lot of leadership in high school. So I'm a Hugo Bryan Youth Leadership alumni, and I volunteer at the United Way of Franklin County and a tutoring platform called Ingenify. And in high school, I was the class president, co-president of the Spanish Honor Society, Mu Alpha Theta, and I was even in my marching band. So those were all in high school, but obviously now I'm transitioning to college, so I'm interested in seeing what new things I'll pick up.
Okay, and then my name is Paola, so I'm a rising freshman at Stanford University. Some of the other schools that I got accepted into were like Tulane, UT Austin. I was granted the Terry Scholarship, and I was also accepted into Vassar College and a few other like state schools. I'm a first generation low income immigrant student, and I'm interested in studying immigrant or criminal law. So in high school, I was really involved in a lot of like politics clubs, a lot of community service clubs, and I also did IB in high school. And then Young, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Young. I'm a rising sophomore at Stanford. I'm studying computer science with a minor in math and philosophy. So in high school, I did a lot of stuff that are technically interdisciplinary. So I did a lot of stuff in the humanities, political sciences, like I did a lot of contests and stuff. So if any of y'all are curious about that, please ask me about it later. And a little bit about me for this presentation is that I'm familiar with a lot of programs and scholarships and stuff that are kind of more like big name. So if you have any questions about the application process for those, I can help answer them as well.
Do you want to go ahead and talk about this slide?
Yeah, for sure. So since the academic rigor session was unfortunately canceled, we just want to kind of brush up on that really quickly today here. So in terms of academic rigor, generally the advice is to take the hardest course load available at your school, or the course load that you can handle that is as challenging as possible, and to make sure that in your junior year or your senior year, to specialize in classes that you know you want to maybe perhaps pursue in college. So for example, if you're interested in political science, you might want to take AP government or some other class in that area, and then tailor them to your major interest and your future career. So basically kind of explore earlier on and then specialize later in your high school career. And then a big tip is to not take easier classes just to maintain a 4.0 GPA. It's definitely okay to get a B or 2 or even more than that. It's just so you can, the admissions officer can see that you're really trying the hardest in the course load that you're involved with, and to actually prepare yourself for college and the level of difficulty there. And so you want to challenge yourself to the full extent, and the admissions officer will recognize you and the grades you earn in those classes. And then kind of like as like a converse to that, if anything, taking less rigorous classes is not good prep for college. So you would want to take more challenging classes in that area to begin with. And then also, if your school doesn't offer a class that you're interested in, you can talk to your administrator or your teacher about self-studying as well. That's an option for you.
All right, so now we're going to talk about why extracurriculars are important. Extracurriculars show commitment, time management, different interests you may have, and just how well-rounded you are. It's really important that you kind of have a balance of both parts of your life. And it's a great way to stand out in a sea of excellent academic students, especially when you're applying to competitive colleges and universities, and any one of those students can have a 4.0 or take AP classes, but this is really where you can stand out and show how you're different. It's a great way to discover different aspects of your personality and what your interests are. I thought it was a great way to explore different job fields, because not everybody knows what they want to go into. So it's a good way to explore that as well. And it's also a great way to build meaningful connections and get letters of recommendation and things like that.
Yeah, and then continuing on from what Sabeen was talking about, as a rule of thumb, if it comes down to it, you should probably prioritize academics over extracurriculars, and it's super stressful to balance both during the academic year. So even though a lot of other students, you might think that they're pursuing a bunch of stuff in addition to their coursework, if it comes down to it, you should probably prioritize the former. And then some just general advice in terms of keeping track of your extracurriculars and your activities during the school year is to keep a Google Calendar that's color-coded, or like a Notion that's like a kind of like a task tracking app. So basically keep track of all of your commitments every week, so you can make sure to dedicate specific time to all of them and not kind of procrastinate on both academics and extracurriculars. And then another piece of good advice is to dedicate study time every day. And that activities usually have peak seasons during the semester or quarter where competition or commitments increase. So you probably want to plan around that in the beginning of each year or each semester. And then another general rule is that it's probably a good benchmark to spend around 10 hours on extracurriculars each week in order to just have your commitment out of the way, and also to dive in deep enough that you can actually create some sort of impact, but not having that kind of impact other aspects of your life. And then there's kind of diminishing returns after that. Unless you're like super passionate about something that you're like really want to pursue beyond those 10 hours, it's probably a good rule of thumb to just stick to 10. Yeah, and then for the second part of that, it's sometimes super hard to decide which one to focus on out of academics and extracurriculars. So a good exercise for you to do is to figure out what your priorities are each week, and to like write them down so you know like which ones to focus on at one given time. And that you shouldn't want to procrastinate on either activities or extracurriculars. You should prepare for them both in scheduling and studying, and plan for those at least a week in advance, so you don't like worry about studying while you're doing your activities, or worry about activities while you're studying. So it's probably good to just kind of allocate time for those separately. And so a concrete example for that is that, for example, you have a big regional science competition, and the same week you have a physics test or something like that. You should probably prioritize the science world during the early weeks of the school semester, and then you won't have as much work to do for those later on. There's just one example. You probably want to, again, plan around like when your activity becomes the most high commitment. And it's can be hard since some activities and academics ramp up around the same time. But again, be deliberate about which commitments you choose every semester in school. And then also just another piece of advice, you probably want to have activities that are some ways for you to relax. They don't all have to be like super academic, super intellectual. The activities don't need to be super stressful, like volunteering with friends, political canvassing, arts and sports can be really good ways to de-stress and also add breadth to your interests without having it be super stressful.
Okay, so I kind of want to talk a little bit about what you should be doing your sophomore year. So you definitely don't have to follow this at all to a T. This is just kind of what I followed and what I would have liked to follow my sophomore year. And I know I did a sophomore year timeline and a junior year timeline, but I know there's some seniors in here, so I'll talk about that a little bit more too. So around August, that's kind of when usually schools have like your rush week and stuff. My school district personally starts in August. I know some of them start like late August or like close to September. So around that time, that's when you should really start looking at new organizations that you may want to join. Your junior year gets super busy. So if you really want to like explore and stuff, freshman and sophomore year are the best years to do it because that's when you really have more availability in your schedule because classes aren't so hard and you just have more time to really explore everything. And then just like make a list of like the interests that you have and just join things in your school or in your community that are kind of like that. And then usually around that time period, that's when you're joining those activities and those sports. And then like Young was saying, there's also peak seasons for when there's competitions and stuff like that. So if you joined any sort of competition club slash sports, you should be prepping for that. This year is really the year where you kind of get to like work out the kinks of like competitions and all of that because you really get to kind of like practice those competitions. Like you don't necessarily need to be good at it yet. You have like 2 years for you to be able to like compete and like get better at it, but it's really important to kind of immerse yourself in those things when you are in your like freshman sophomore year. So then around like the time of like December and February, that's when I'd say that you need to get involved in more community service. I think looking for opportunities outside of your school matters a lot. You can definitely do community service within your school, but I feel like the opportunities that I found more rewarding and more like I guess community based that I liked were outside of school. So for example, like the Humane Society, like going to the food bank, stuff like that. It really helps. And honestly, like yeah, like community service is something that you have to do, but it's also something that you should like to do. So for example, like if you really like going with like playing with like dogs and stuff, like going to the animal shelter every so often, fit that into your schedule because like not only does that also like help in part of like relaxing and stuff, like yes, it builds your resume, but it also makes you feel better after you do something like that. And then towards the end of the school year, so like May, think of the activities that you actually want to continue. So let's say you tried out a bunch of these activities and you were like, okay, like out of these, the ones that I was really interested in were like 5 out of 10. And so you leave those and then you leave behind the ones that you didn't want to do, just that you're not spreading yourself too thin, which we'll talk about later. And then honestly, sophomore year, I take the summer to relax because junior and senior year are super packed and heavy. So really like your summer is the time that you really have to relax. You can do like maybe like an activity or do like things for fun, but try not to like stress yourself out too much in a time where you don't really need to be stressed yet. And then the next part is the junior year timeline. So I feel like this is the most important one. So the first thing that you want to do your junior year is start looking for leadership positions. So you've already had clubs from your freshman year, sophomore year. Now you want to take some leadership in it because leadership is super important. You get a lot of benefits from being a leader, not only on your resume, but also just in terms of like your growth as a student and even just as an individual. And then the second thing you want to start doing is thinking about a passion project. So we'll talk about passion projects later on in case you don't know what it is. But these passion projects are basically things that you lead. And you might also want to start like organizing community service events. That also helps. What I did my junior year was that I organized, that was during the pandemic, so we couldn't do like anything big. So I basically organized like a donation drive where people would literally just drive by and drop off materials and stuff for this community, for this indigenous community in Juarez, because I do live in a border city. So we did something like that. So things like that were like it's things that you're generally interested in doing and you generally care about. And then the third thing is to get involved in more competitions and outside of school activities. So like I mentioned before, freshman, sophomore year is your time to kind of like get your feet wet. And then junior year is when you're really like giving it your all in terms of like competitions and stuff like that. And then the fourth one is to build a resume of your activities. So this is super important. The template that I personally used, it was like the UT Austin Macomb School resume template. That one helped me a lot. And basically it just allows you to organize your activities for when you start applying to summer programs and internships. So that's super important. It kind of allows you to administer yourself in like a better way. And so then like the next step is starting to apply to summer programs, which we'll talk about later on. But a few examples of them are the Subiendo Academy, LIDA, USC Bovard Scholars, and there are so many more. And these are super beneficial. I personally did the Subiendo Academy at UT Austin, and I think that's only for Texas residents, but it was super interesting to be a part of that. They actually flew us out to UT Austin, and I know LIDA flies people out to Princeton. So it's just a really good way to also get to know about the colleges that you might want to go to. And it's also a good way to just like meet other people and find out what you want in a college. And the last thing is look for summer internships or jobs. So once again, like this just works on your responsibility skills and all of that. And internships are just a good way to like also network and find out more about your interests. So for me, like I did an internship with West Fund, which is an abortion clinic in Texas. And basically they had like something under them. It was called From 36 Community Project. And basically I got paid to literally just go to classes to learn about advocacy work and stuff like that. And I would just do like little projects online because we were still in the pandemic. So yeah, like just finding little things like that that you'd like. And then just about like senior year and stuff, that's when you really want to hone down like what you love. And then you also want to start like looking into the colleges that you really like, making a college list and all of that.
Yeah, just adding on to what Paula was saying, during the summer, it's probably one of the most important times for you to develop your activities or volunteer work without any academic pressure, and that you have unconstrained time and also an opportunity to dedicate yourself. So during the summer, you should really hone your interests and pursue like passion projects, meet like-minded peers in like programs or just other spaces, and get introduced to and involved in more like activities and stuff. It's really important to get out there to actually pursue activities in depth, because one opportunity can lead to the next, which is like where a lot of how like that's kind of how you get to know like what you're really interested in terms of activities. And usually as kind of like a piece of advice, paid summer programs, especially the ones that are super expensive, or like more than $4,000 over the summer, or like a paid summer camp at somewhere even like Harvard or Columbia or somewhere like that, are probably not that impressive to admissions officers, because we're more like it's something that everyone can do basically if you pay for them. So you really should be pursuing stuff that you're actually interested in and looking out for activities that are either free or highly reduced fee. And then in terms of like what you can ask me about later, you can ask me about what particular programs you can look into. And then in terms of what you want to pursue in terms of summer programs, you can probably ask your teachers or your local like upperclassmen in your high school to search for like programs in your area or state, because some of those are not searchable on the internet. And you can also use the internet to find some like bigger programs or resources like FGS that provide other opportunities for you. And then also, just as a caveat, it's really important not to like stress yourself out too much, because already like a lot of flight students have familial obligations they have to fulfill over the summer, like working to support your family or working in a family business or just other stuff like that, like taking care of family members. Stuff like that doesn't mean that you have to like do a bunch of stuff over the summer. That stuff is also super important and really impressive. So supporting your family or supporting your community as a fly student is also like really great. So if you're not doing something super like high level or like super impressive sounding over the summer and you're doing something like that, that's also perfectly fine. Yeah, these are some like summer programs that I was talking about earlier. So in the humanities, you can look for stuff like the Chile Association Summer Seminars, Iowa Young Writers, Kenyan/Adroit. These are kind of like writing seminars and creative writing like programs that are like highly reduced fee. You have to look for stuff like Yale Young Global Scholars, the Stanford Humanities Institute, or Juilliard Pre-College that are kind of in the arts and humanities more broadly. And in the STEM aspect, you can look for programs, especially like Summer Science Program or SSP, the Research Science Institute, the Carnegie Mellon SAMS program, MIT MITES or MOSEC program, Ross and Stanford Math Camp, which are for kind of math, and the higher for kind of for like science and research. So basically the whole point of this slide is just to show you like there's a lot of stuff online if you look for them, but then also pay attention to like local programs and regional stuff too.
And if you guys want to go ahead and like take a picture of the slides and stuff, that's also cool because like this gives you a lot of like opportunities to resources. So I'm gonna give it like 5 seconds. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is leadership positions. So I mentioned it before, how in your junior year, you really want to start looking for those leadership positions because those are the positions and those are the things that are going to help you stand out in your resume. So actually in your resume, you should typically have like a section where you talk about the clubs where you were in a leadership position. And that's super important because it shows your responsibility, it shows your commitment to something. And I think that's one of the biggest things for you to be able to lead something and work collaborative with a group of like executive boards to like help like develop something. Like, so for example, if you're an yearbook and you're the EIC or you're like a design editor, like those are really important things to do as a part of like your like resume, your whole college application process, because it allows you to just like show what you're good at. Basically you're showing what you're committed to. And it also allows you to grow. Like being in leadership does a lot for you. Like even if like you're scared of like the bigger like leadership position roles. So for example, like let's say like you're a junior, you're like, I'm not ready to be like president of this club yet. Like maybe you can take like something like a secretary role, and even those roles like help you grow a lot. They definitely teach you like a lot about responsibility. They teach you about commitment. They teach you a lot about communication. They just teach you like overall a lot of skills. And they also help you like in other fields. So for example, like if you're like a leader in, let's say, your NHS chapter, that also allows you to maybe have like the drive and the availability to like create like a passion project because you already have experience in leading something. And that's really like honestly what colleges seem to want. Like they want people that they know like are driven and are leaders, and you find that a lot like in those positions. And so if you're kind of finding it hard to figure out like, oh, well, like how can I get a leadership position? My best tips are to only apply for leaderships on organizations I genuinely have a passion for. Because honestly, like there have been times at my school and stuff where like there will be someone that applies for like a leadership position, and then once they get it, like they don't really care about it, so the organization does nothing and like it falls apart. So if you really care about something, like it'll show in the work that you do. So like I mentioned, like in this slide, also like put in that work. So it matters a lot because you can see like, for example, like if you're in NHS and you're the president, and let's say you only did like 3 activities that year, like it goes to show that you didn't really care about the position that you had, you just cared about like the title of it. So it's really important that you actually want that position, and then also thinking of the position that you want, like what are you good at, what can you bring to the table that will make the organization better. And then the next thing I want to talk about is passion projects. So passion projects, if you didn't know, they're basically projects and activities that you enjoy, that you are starting. It can be in school, but typically they're used outside of school, and you are the one leading it. Like, yeah, you can have a team, but you're typically the one like starting it. And sometimes passion projects don't have like sponsors and stuff. Usually like you are the sponsor a lot of the times. They can, but sometimes they don't. So examples of these can be like nonprofits, like podcasts, blogs, small businesses. So I personally did like the first two, so the nonprofit and the podcast. So my friend and I had really been wanting to have like a platform where we can just like talk about things that were important to us. So we formed this podcast called The Blank Project, and would basically like showcase local El Paso artists, and we'd showcase their like a new artist every episode. And then after that, we'd talk about like something that was really important to members of our community. So we talk about things like seasonal depression, burnout, like stuff like that, where it was just like things that were interesting to people that were a part of our community. And then we also did the nonprofit where we had that donation drive and stuff. And we even got to meet with like our local congresswoman. Like we just did like a bunch of interesting stuff that mattered to us. And I think that's the best thing about passion projects, that you're not restricted to anything. You get to do what you want to do. And that's the biggest thing. And I think when colleges see this, they can see that drive that you have, not only as a leader, but just also as like being like innovative and starting something new. And I think that's really important. So you might be wondering, well, like I want to start one, but how do I even get there? So the first thing that you do with like all things is brainstorm. So this is super important because you kind of have to narrow down what you're passionate about, what you like, what you want to do. And that kind of allows you to kind of narrow down what you're really gonna be doing this passion project with. So then the next step is to, once you have your idea, you gather a group of friends if it's necessary. So a lot of the times, like I'd be scared that like my idea wouldn't take off if I didn't have people supporting me. So to me, it was important to gather like my group of friends to like, for example, like post on their Instagram or like talk about things that would bring awareness to the project that I was doing. So for example, with the donation drive, like getting my groups of friends to like put their houses as like donation spots across El Paso so that I would be able to like have reach like a broader like audience. And so that really helps a lot. You can definitely do it alone. Like for example, if you have like a blog or like a small business, like you definitely can take that alone, but it does help a lot if you have like a team with you. So then the next part is also plan it appropriately. So an example of a passion project can be also be something like FGS. So FGS, like we have a lot of meetings, like usually weekly, sometimes even more than once a week. And we have things like, for example, like we use Taskgate and Slack to be able to see like how everyone is doing with their assigned work. So doing something like that, or even like, for example, if you have like a small business and your priority is to advertise in that moment, then having like a plan of how you're going to advertise, not just saying like, oh, well, I'm gonna just post on Instagram. No, like write it down, like what is gonna be my schedule, when am I gonna post, what am I gonna post, like who's my intended audience, what goal do I want to reach, having things like that. And if you have a team, like also having team meetings and stuff like that, so everyone is always up to date, that is all like really important. And then my last tip is honestly to just start it. I feel like we think too much about things and then we kind of psych ourselves out of doing things. And that's kind of where a lot of passion projects die. Like they just die in our head because we don't actually feel confident enough to start them. But the truth is, like, even if your passion project ends up failing, like it gives you experience and it doesn't really count as a failure because you did try it. And then also, if you want to try another one, then you kind of know the steps and you kind of know what things to do and to not do.
All right, so we're just going to talk about, well, I'm going to talk about two other types of extracurriculars. So the first is volunteering, and just to, go over, volunteering is like a voluntary act of an individual or group freely giving their time and labor for community service. So there are four main reasons why we should volunteer, and I believe that's on the next slide. So the four reasons why you should volunteer is that you can gain new skills. You kind of learn things like time management, or maybe you're doing office work or simple things like that. It's something you can add to your resume. And something I learned was that a lot of personality gets added to your resume because usually you're choosing to volunteer at some place you're passionate about. And so that's kind of what you should be thinking about. Your personality or your passion kind of shines through in that area. I'm sure all of you guys are really busy and already, in sports or other extracurriculars, but when you're putting time aside to do something where you really aren't gaining anything for yourself, it really does show a lot about your personality and who you are. And you're also showing a lot of responsibility. Just like a job, you're going to have to be punctual, you're going to have due dates, you're going to need to connect with others and talk to adults, and those are all really important skills we should all have. The next thing we're going to be talking about are internships. So this is a position where students can work in an organization, sometimes without pay, but it's mostly to gain work experience. The biggest question people kind of ask when looking for internships is, how do I find them? So two big things I'm an advocate for is LinkedIn and Instagram. On LinkedIn, you really get to connect to the professional world and you really stay informed about your career, and you can move your own career forward. It's not just for career professionals. You guys are all old enough to have a LinkedIn and are more than welcome to have a LinkedIn. It's in a dynamic job market. It is really important to keep your professional image current as well, because so much changes. People want, multifaceted, well-roundedness, and LinkedIn's a really good way to show your work experience, your volunteering, different organizations you're a part of, and things like that. I personally have a LinkedIn, and I really use it to connect with either people in my community or people who are dentists or go to dental school, and kind of see what they're up to and what kind of internships they're in. So I kind of just use it as like a feeler to, I guess, a feeler of maybe what I want to do, or how other people are becoming successful, maybe what steps they're doing right, and things I can incorporate in my own journey. On Instagram, job recruiting has really soared in the past 2 years. I was the head of social media at a company a year or two ago, and I was in charge of their Instagram, and we'd post a lot of our jobs there, or even internships from other companies. And like, it was a really popular page. You can search for hashtags such as now hiring, hashtag high school internships, Gen Z jobs search, and many more. A lot of student organizations like First Generation Support, they repost and reshare a lot of different opportunities on their social media. So it's really good for if you follow these organizations, and maybe the first one doesn't catch your eye, but if you keep giving it a chance, it'll be good for you, because it's again a good way to delve into different things, and sometimes it'll be remote, which can be helpful for your schedule as well. NASA, Kohl's, and the Smithsonian museums, they have a specific pages just for their interns. So NASA, literally, their intern page is NASA interns, and they post their different internships, and they have a really huge one, I think, that comes out around the spring, summer, to apply to for high school students to, find. And a lot of times we look for internships and you only see college ones, but if you really dig deep enough and really narrow down your search, you'll definitely be able to find something.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk briefly about academic competitions and contests. So personally, I'm a huge fan and proponent of contests and academic competitions. I think they're a great way to both learn the content you're learning in school. For example, if you're taking physics right now, you can try out physics competitions while both learning for your class and also for the contest, so you get better at both. So I think that they're great extracurriculars because the things you study in school are directly useful to the activity, and that you, again, end up getting smarter in class and also get a lot of accolades if you're learning a lot from these contests. So I think personally, stuff like the USA Biology Olympiad, Chemistry Olympiad, the Computer Science Olympiad. So there's also a lot of other stuff out there locally and also regionally in your state. You can ask your teachers and your school administrators about local competitions you can be a part of. And also ask for their advice on how to prepare. So one piece of insight for contests is that you don't necessarily need to be part of a club that prepares for the contest in order to be a part of them. You can just basically do it by yourself. There's a lot of stuff where you basically just take a test or do some sort of project that you can enter into a contest that doesn't require you to be a part of any organization or team. So that's something really good you can do on top of a lot of the other kind of community-based extracurriculars you have on your resume. And then also I just have a list of some other stuff you can look into, like the Math Olympiad. That one's pretty major. The Chemistry Olympiad, Physics Olympiad, Biology Olympiad. There's Computer Science Olympiads, linguistics. I think there's even Geography and History. So it's very impressive if you even make it past round one for some of these contests. And then you can also just get involved by finding a test center for those or something. And there's also more contests that are particularly for like more niche fields, like the Brain Bee, it's about neuroscience, and then the National History Day, it's about like writing a paper about some like obscure or like uncovered event in national history that it should be talked about. And then you can find a lot of these online. And also there's a lot more kind of free form competitions that are being organized by students or other colleges or universities, like hackathons, so you can be a part of, that are also really good to do, kind of like just to test your knowledge from school. And it's not super, super high commitment. You just need to show up that day to like take the exam or submit something to the contest. And yeah, you can find more online at sites like Reddit, but also be careful about Reddit because it's like super toxic. There's also some other stuff like young arts or scholastic art and writing that you can partake in if you're really interested in art and writing. And then in science, there's the Regeneron Science Talent Search, and also ISEF if you're interested in those. So basically just enter your work into a lot of contests, apply for a bunch of things, and then just see where you go from there. Yeah, and then I just wanted to add something else, because we've been talking about finding your passion and stuff this whole presentation. Just another note about finding that passion. It's super hard. I mean, I know as personal experience, like it's super hard to know like in your heart what you want to pursue in terms of extracurriculars. Like I was interested in so many things, and ultimately I didn't, like I explored all of them in high school, and I didn't like choose to specialize in any one thing. So it's super hard to like know in your heart what you want to specialize in and like what you're truly the most passionate about. I think the way I would mitigate that is looking for role models on social media and locally that do a bunch of like really cool stuff with their extracurriculars and activities. People like my other panelists, like looking at what they're doing and kind of like seeing if that sounds interesting to you, and then basically following their footsteps or trying to follow in their footsteps without like duplicating that. So I think it's super interesting to find like role models that do what you think are cool. Also, don't be deterred for something if you're not immediately good at it, or get leadership in a club. So you should be persistent and keep trying it. Maybe in junior year, you might want to divest your energy from it if you still haven't made that much progress in terms of accomplishing things in that kind of extracurricular. But earlier on in sophomore year, especially, I think it's really good to keep exploring your options. And that also like accomplishments and awards are ultimately not as important as leadership and character development and perseverance in the end. I know this personally because I read my application file, like I read the comments my admissions officer wrote about my application, and they like barely talked about like awards like at all. And they cared more about your character and your leadership and your like what your teachers say about you than anything else. I think see extracurriculars and volunteering and passion projects as a way to make yourself a better person instead of as a way to like chase after awards or accolades.
Yeah, and so the last thing I really want to hit home is that consistency is really key, and it's always about quality over quantity. It's not really how many extracurriculars you do, it's kind of how much you grew in maybe a few. So another thing to keep in mind is if you're using the Common App to apply to college, you can only submit 10. And so if you have like 20, just know that it doesn't really matter because they're only going to look at the 10 that you spend on the most anyways. A lot of times, like you don't want to sign up for like 20 extracurriculars at the same time either, because that's a lot of work on you. Like it may not seem like it at first, but you truly really do grow and get more responsibility as you get more involved in an organization. And that's really something to take into account too. Really think about how the extracurricular will benefit you too. Like it's great if you're benefiting an organization, but make sure that you're getting something in return too, something for your resume, getting paid, connections, networking, things like that. And it's really important to think about like how will it contribute to your like theme of your application. I remember attending a college webinar and they said if you try to boil down your application to one word and then try to center everything around that, like how everything kind of relates, so everything kind of goes in a story. And so for me, my biggest thing was community, because it didn't matter if it was my school community or at home or through volunteering, like I knew everything could go back to that one really broad word. And make sure to find your passions and interests first and look for your extracurriculars after. I know Paola will talk about this next, but like, don't do something just because you think it'll look good on a resume or it'll help you get into college. Really do it because you want to. And admissions officers really can tell when someone's like invested in their work and when they're not. And give it time. Like, you're not going to be a president or a founder at day one. It's going to take you a long time to get there. I certainly did not get all my leadership my freshman year of high school. It did take me time. I started freshman year, I was the secretary. The next year I was the vice president, and then I was the president. And every year I kind of, you had to build your way up. And it's really important that like, sometimes it's also good just to be a member, because you don't want to be a president of anything either, because you also want to take care of yourself and have fun and also focus on your academics and things like that.
So just as a final touch on what Sabeen and Young have said throughout this presentation, do what you love, not just what you're like, I guess I kind of like it. Do what you really love and what you really care about, because when your heart isn't in it, your work is going to show. It's going to show that you don't really want to do it. You're using it for your resume. You're using it for that little like title. You're using it because you think the admissions officer is going to want to see it. But if you don't really like it, then the work that you have to show for it, if an admission officer asks you, well, oh, what was your favorite part of this activity, or what did you learn? You're not really going to have much to say about that. And it's just something that you're not going to like. You're going to be miserable doing it. So why are you going to do something for your resume when you're going to be miserable doing it? Why not have like a colorful list of like Sabine was saying, 10 activities that you genuinely loved and that revolve around who you are as a person. Let's say it's all like creative things, then maybe your word can be like creativity, because it shows who you are as a person. And that's the biggest thing. Like, you want to show colleges your identity, and in high school you want to develop your identity. So by picking the things that you really love, you're showing how you spent your time in high school, who you were during those 4 years, who you developed to be in those 4 years. And that also shows how you're going to be an addition to a college's campus. And also it prevents yourself from spreading yourself too thin, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be taking up too many things that you don't really enjoy doing. Because it takes away, like, let's say you have like a project you're really passionate about, all the love that you have for this one thing is going to be mixed into these other little things that you don't really care about, and it's just going to take away from the things that you actually love. So now we're going to answer a few questions from the chat. So let me go ahead and see what people have been saying. So one of them is being a founding member to a group, I am now the president of, something I should mention. Do you guys want to answer? Sabine or Chen?
Yeah, I can answer. Yeah, it's definitely like a good leadership position. Any leadership position truly is good at, especially if you started something that's really great. But I would also say you don't need to start something for it to be good either. Like, don't feel like you need to invent something new or have to start from the ground up. There's so many organizations already made, and they're oftentimes looking for students to get involved and help. So it does look good if like you're already doing it or you're truly passionate about it. But if you don't have to start from the ground up, it honestly would be more worth your time to help something that has already started and build it up from there.
And then another question was, is kind of like the same like sentiment of, is founder or co-founder usually a good leadership position? I think it is. I think what Sabine was saying like also makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, like if you're also helping something else, like it's also a good leadership position. I think it's just really the work that you do that matters more so than the position. I think, yeah, like it looks impressive to be like the founder of something, but if you're the founder of something and then that didn't really lead anywhere, then that's not going to translate as well as, like, let's say you joined something and you did something for that company or that organization. So I think it's a lot about what you do with that. And then someone said, I don't know, Young, if you want to answer this next one. I have a really hard time separating something that I truly love from something that I am doing, just because I feel like I should. Any tips?
Yeah, for sure. I think I want to add on to what Paula was saying before about like doing stuff that you really care about. And like, of course, it's great to have like co-founder, founder, or president on your college applications. And obviously it looks great to have leadership. But ultimately, if you don't really know what you're doing and like the specific impact of your organization that you founded, I don't really think it's as helpful as, again, joining a pre-existing organization and just really focusing your efforts on that. So I think there's kind of like an emphasis nowadays in college applications to like start stuff or be a founder of something. But I think you can just as well make an impact or a difference and just be as impressive if you just join something that already exists. As an answer, the question about separating something from like a true passion from something that they're doing just because it feels like they should. I think a tip that I had was like, the school district that I went to, or like my entire educational career so far, people really pressured students to go into STEM fields, especially like science, math, technology, to be a doctor, be an engineer. And for like a time, I didn't really know if that's what I wanted to do, but ultimately I did end up pursuing like engineering in college. Sometimes like it is super hard to separate from like, if you start off, which is something I talked about earlier, was like, if you start off doing something and it feels hard and it feels like you don't really like it in the beginning, you shouldn't quit right away. You should give it some time to see if you actually are interested in it before you make a decision about whether or not you like can do it versus you just have like a bit of difficulty like starting it out. So I think yeah, just basically persist, but know your limits. I think if you persist for like a whole year and something and you still don't feel like you like it that much, I think you should take a break. Doesn't mean that you can't pursue in the future in college, but yeah, it's good to like take some space to actually reflect. Oh, Sarah, did you have a question?
So y'all mentioned AP classes a few times into the PowerPoint, and I personally am doing my school associate program, which is me taking dual like college classes and graduating with an associate degree. So will that matter into applications that I didn't take AP classes?
No, I don't think it matters at all. Basically, what admissions officer is really looking for is that you took the most challenging classes that are available to you. So if those classes end up being like pursuing dual enrollment classes, which a lot of people in my high school, my school district did, that's perfectly fine. Like you don't have to follow like AP or IB curricula to be like showing that you're challenging yourself academically. So I think, yeah, it's perfectly fine to do that. And maybe it's even more impressive that you're getting your associates.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a lot about the workload that you take on. And then I also want to touch on Amanda's question about like separating something that you love from something that you're just doing just because you feel like you should. I think also like a rule of thumb, like Young was saying, like, yeah, when you start, I feel like sometimes when things are hard, you're kind of like, oh, like I feel uncomfortable doing this. But as you go on, if that feeling is still there, not just that it's hard, but you're like let's say like you're in an organization, you're in something, and you're like, oh, I kind of don't want to go to this meeting, or you avidly avoid going to these meetings. You don't like the environment in that. You feel like you're doing less work for it, or after you finish something for that, you don't really feel accomplished. I think that's when you also know that you don't really want to do it. You're just doing it because other people are telling you to do it. And then the next question is, so I want to pursue a career in medicine, so I try to get myself involved in related extracurriculars, but does it actually matter for college since I have to apply for medical school after college? Do any of you want to answer that first?
Yeah, I can. So I'm also pre-health, so I kind of understand what you're saying. It kind of matters. Like you don't really have to choose things that are only medical related. But there may be qualities of maybe someone who is interested in the health, like maybe somehow like how you can work with others, you're a team player, things like that. But I wouldn't say like you have to volunteer at a hospital or things like that. That is something I feel like you could continue on in college. For me, but for me, I knew I wanted to apply to some of those like accelerated programs or guaranteed programs. So I knew I needed some, dental like experience then. But if you're just going to go and just do the normal way of like 4 and 4, then I wouldn't really worry about it too much. But I would recommend maybe just so like what kind of specialty you're interested in, things like that. That could be helpful if you do a few internships in that aspect. But I wouldn't say like everything you have to do does not have to be centered around the fact that you want to go to med school. Like there's so much more to your personality than that.
And Sarah, did you have another question?
Yes. So how important, how does it matter, like the ACT, how much does it matter?
The ACT?
Yes.
So for me personally, it didn't really matter because, well, like for me, like it was test optional. So the only college that I submitted my test scores to was Georgetown, and that was it. No other schools like required me to take to submit it. So for me, I feel like it didn't really matter. I think that's why like extracurriculars can be super important, and kind of showing your passion is super important. Those leadership positions are so important because they kind of show like who you are and how strong you are as a student. Rather than showing like how strong you are just academically, it kind of shows your character and your ability as a student. Sabine and Young, do you guys want to answer that too?
Yeah, I think a particular piece of insight I have about this was I am currently a sophomore in college. So when the year I applied, there was a lot of people who like just started out in test optional admissions, so like people didn't know what to do. But then I was talking to more people at Stanford about like their college application process, and I found out that most people didn't submit their test scores, even though like they scored pretty well, and didn't really end up affecting their decision whatsoever. So I think that test scores, like especially as of late, are kind of like losing their like admissions impact. Like it doesn't really matter as much. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with everything they're saying. I also was kind of like in the same boat where like the SAT finally came back and I took it, but I wasn't really happy with my score. I'm just like that's not my strongest suit. It's definitely not standardized testing. But I didn't really feel like concerned or worried, especially if you're making it up, like maybe making up for your score in like your essays and your extracurriculars and all your academics and stuff. That kind of shows more of like your growth over the 4 years and just like that one number. Like I don't think a college would ever reject you just because of that.
I was just a little concerned when I got my ACT score back. I'm just like not a great test taker. And I was just wondering if that like had a huge impact on the application.
Yeah, and if you really like are that concerned about it, or you really don't, like you don't have to like feel pressure to send it in either. Like it doesn't make you like a worse applicant if you just decide not to send it in, because they have to kind of give you a holistic review. So you'd be like judged fairly as everyone else.
Yeah,
Right,
like
thank you.
I know a lot of people in my community personally didn't get the highest SAT scores compared to what people that usually like apply to these prestigious schools get. And a lot of us still got in, like I have friends that are going to Brown and NYU, like I'm going to Stanford. So you can definitely still get into these top colleges like without having like a perfect SAT score. So those are gonna be all the questions that we're gonna take for today. Thank you all for joining. So thank you to Sabine and Young. Also, I'm really glad like you guys got something out of this. All meetings are going to be recorded and uploaded to the YouTube channel for FGS. And when you leave the meeting, there's gonna be a form for you guys to fill out. So that's all. Thank you guys. Bye.